What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to dive into another episode of my top 5 picks, this time for the month of August. Now, if you missed July, now you might want to go back and check out and sort of see what's going on. This is sort of the beginning of the transition time of the year. You hear September, October, obviously, that's a big time. Fish are going to transition a lot, but there's a lot of stuff going on. And so I try to keep this, if you've not watched this segment at all, I try to sort of give everybody a good understanding of what I think is going on and what I've seen go on all over the country. So I try to give a little bit of tidbits on some of my friends down here in the Southeast. In the South, it's still hot. And then also for some of my friends up in Canada or up in the northern part of the US, whether it's New York, Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota, those areas that you have more natural lakes, or even northern Indiana, Michigan area. I try to give you guys a little bit of understanding because there is a little bit difference. And the biggest key to this whole thing is forage. So a lot of times down here, we're really basing a lot of our stuff off of a couple different things, whether it's bluegill, shad, and crayfish is really the 1, 2, 3 for the most part. Then you go on the northern parts of the states, and you're talking perch, you're talking bluegill. You could talk about owls depending on the fishery that you're fishing. But really those are and then obviously crayfish as well. So let's dive into it. The nuts and bolts of August bass fishing. Let's do it right now.
Let's go.
We're here in Mexico. We are in the Dominican Republic. So I'm gonna tell you a couple different tips that have helped me over the years.
Wow! Unbelievable! Jacob Wheeler makes history!
Okay, so like I sort of mentioned in the introduction, I felt like this is the dog days of summer. Okay, now, if you're down in the South and you're dealing with those hot temperatures, which we have, it's been unseasonably, it's just been so hot. And the water temperatures are super hot, they're super high, which makes it a little bit difficult to really, I feel like, get a lot of bites, especially in the daytime. A lot of people go on the night fishing side of things and get out there at night and try to catch fish at night because a lot of times they feed at night. Those big ones will feed at night, but you still can catch fish during the day. And so I picked some baits that I felt like were going to be going down. Now, this is the thing. Now, where am I going to start to look for these fish before we dive into the baits? The one thing that I'm going to look for is they're going to start to move back shallow. So if you live on a lake that has a lot of deep water and those fish are starting, like on Tennessee River, I'm gonna say even a grass lake, those fish that were on the outside grass line or were out there offshore, they're going to start to make their way back up there in that mid depth. And when I'm saying mid depth for a lot of these largemouth, I'm talking 6 to 10 foot of water. That's really what I say mid-depth stuff. They made their transition out to the summer haunts. The summer haunts, they've been there. It's been hot as all get out. Now all of a sudden, the bait starts to change a little bit. The forage starts to change a little bit, and there's opportunities to catch these fish that are up here shallower. Whether it's the last bit of the bluegill spawn, whether it's they're eating up on that year's shad. So anyway, let's dive into the first bait. The first bait I'm going to pick, this one's gonna be tough. Let me see here. My first selection, okay, I'm just gonna do it simple and easy. An accent buzzbait. This is a little buzzbait that I designed several years ago, and it's a really battle dude. But a buzzbait in general to me is a bait that's super versatile because I can skip this, I can fish around wood, I can fish around rock. I have a white one on right here. Now this is the thing. I know some people, I throw a toad on this buzzbait a lot, but this one's a way that I like to rig it as well. White buzzbait, and I put like a little crawl on the back of it, like a white crawl. I trim the skirt up pretty high. You can sort of see that on the end of that, I cut the skirt right at the end of the hook. So that way I actually made it a little bit smaller. This is really the buzzbait that I'll start to throw more, or the profile that I'll start to throw more when this fish are really starting to key in on a little bit smaller bait. It's still a bit bigger profile, but it's not as big as a big profile toad. If those fish are really keying in on bluegill or on gizzard shad, then I might be looking at throwing that toad style bait. But this one is sort of in between. I might even thin that skirt out a little bit and make him a little bit more finessey, but that's definitely one of my number one picks for sure. Now, As far as rod setup, 7-foot medium heavy action rod, 8:3-to-1 gear ratio paradigm reel. And then I throw, this is actually, let's see here. This is actually 40 pound. This is 40 pound Suffix Advanced, or Suffix 832 line. I throw performance a lot, but this is actually 832. So both of them are really good. I like a braid because I can make a longer cast. When I make a longer cast, and that sucker comes there and blows up on it, I have a better chance of getting them. But the problem is, okay, if you have an issue with setting the hook on a top water, because we all get excited, we all get like jumpy and ready to roll, like, oh my gosh, I got to set the hook, like, and you miss a lot of fish on a top water, you might want to go to a monofilament. So, for me, I like braid because I've been throwing a top water a long time and I still miss a few, but I feel like the patience, okay, boom, she eats it, 1-2, to the hook, I got him. So, but if you're having issues with catching those fish, you might want to go to monofilament on your buzzbait or your walking baits or your plopping style baits. You'd be surprised, it might help you a little bit more stretch, a little, it delays your response a little bit, and it might put a few more fish in your boat. So, number 1, buzzbait, accent buzzbait. Number 2 is going to be, oh, it's an old one, but a good one, okay? Oldie, but a good one, okay? This is a Rapala DT3 Fat, okay? This little dude right here is a bad little dude when it comes to the summertime heat. Now, square billing, you think about a square billing, okay? You think about rock, you think about wood, and especially this time of year, you talk about flats, the backs of creeks. You're talking about like backs of creeks, flat areas with isolated pieces of wood. These fish are, setting up on a lot of these little isolated pieces of wood or laydowns. And they've been thrown at with every bait in your box, okay? Reaction strike is the name of the game if you cannot get bites this time of year, especially in that stained water. Stained water, backs of creeks, typically, this is when I really start to transition to that pattern. These fish have been back there. These are resident fish. And it becomes, now those fish aren't that relevant necessarily when the bite's really good out on the main lake. But now those fish are starting to scatter out on the main lake, and these resident fish can really play for good days of fishing. And, if you're fishing a tournament, can start to play for good numbers of fish for a tournament. So, and some quality fish as well. Now, the key with this bait is deflecting off of wood. This is a very buoyant crankbait. It has a harder action, a wider action, deflects really well. And so as far as colors go, you can switch probably him or a natural color in that sort of like stain. If it's really dirty, go with your like black chartreuse or, pair it like this guy right here. And I have this on a 7-2 medium heavy cranking rod, 6:8-to-1 gear ratio paradigm reel, and then I have it on 14-pound Suffix Advanced fluorocarbon. Buddy just came out of the crankbait at iCast. I'm gonna bring him up here. I got a box of them. Now, I wasn't gonna talk about this one just because you cannot get this one yet, but I'm gonna tell you this bait's pretty legitimate too. And this is the brand new Rapala Ott's Garage OG Rocco. Now, it has a circuit board lip, has 2 short tank number 4s on him, has some really good colors, but, and I'm going to tell you the real quick difference between this crankbait and this crankbait. This one's a little bit more subtle. This one has a lot more weight to it, a lot more balsa, so it's way more buoyant. And then this guy's sort of my all-around crankbait. So if I'm going to have next season at this time, I would say this guy is what I'm going to throw if I'm trying to look for a little bit more of a subtle action. And if I'm looking for more of a really like aggressive action, that's what I'm going to throw this guy. Buoyant, a little bit less buoyant, 1-2 punch, pretty good. Okay. All right, now that was number 2. Okay, I do have to bring this up real quick here because I didn't do this in my top water part of it. I will also have to mention this is like 2.5, because you guys know how I like to do it. If I say number 5, if I say 5, it's really like 6 or 7 or 8. I'm sorry, I just sort of go on about that, but I'm trying to give you guys good information, and that's the facts behind it. The part of number 1 is top water, and a frog, a little popping frog like this guy right here. This is sort of like the last month that I would say that the fish mid probably I would say more like middle of the states, or like probably like Indiana and south, that there's really like a bluegill spawn going on. Like there's still a remnants of a bluegill spawn. So there's fish up there really keying in on that. Now, there'll be bluegill up inside of like lily pad fields and matted vegetation and all that stuff throughout the fall. But this little dude right here, I'm more so skipping this around undercut banks, overhangs, underneath boat docks, anywhere those bluegill will be spawning, more like open water frogging. So it's not necessarily mat frogging, but it is also a good time of year to fish mats. Not necessarily like hydrilla mats, because you haven't had the cool nights and it hasn't really like thinned out underneath. But that's coming. That's just sort of adds to number 2. Okay, number 3, you gotta have a finesse game. Okay, now last month I talked about a couple different of my favorite finesse tactics, and this one right here is caught a ton of bass growing up in Indiana and all over the country. This is just a traditional style shaky head, 3/16 ounce weight. Has this little red bug little worm on there. And these are all just baits that I'm literally picking up that I've had rigged up. So that's just sort of 3/16 is my favorite size as far as a shaky head goes. A lot of different great shaky heads out there on the market. But that guy catches a lot of fish. I normally throw this with 10-pound Suffix band fluorocarbon, 8-pound Suffix nano braid. I've talked about that several times. It's really the only spinning rod braid it's the only braid that I really use on my spinning rod. 8-pound. And the key with that, when you're throwing any finesse tactics, and you cast that bait out there, and it just, your line does not like blow around the wind, and the action, it cuts through the water. So, because it's such, this is like, I think it's like 4-pound diameter or something. So it's 8-pound test, but like 3-pound diameter. So it's like really natural in that. So that's what I've had a lot of good luck with that. And where am I going to throw this bait? You really can't go wrong. You could throw this on like lay down trees. You can fish this on rock banks, around docks. I just think the finesse part of it, it's just a bait that gets bites. If you're looking for a bait in this month's edition, that you're like, man, I just want to get a bite, this would be a good one to try. And I Texas rig this, so if you guys are just getting started in bass fishing in general, so I'm going to show this real quick to you. I Texas rig it. Some people talk about this. Let me actually cut this guy down. Well, sure. So I'll just go ahead and rig him up for you. Go down about, I don't know, about 1/4 of an inch or so, 1/2 an inch. Go down through there, turn him around, put it right there. And then this is where a lot of people mess up when they're Texposing it or Texas rigging their saw plastics, is I'll scrunch him up, and then I'll bring him out, like I'll poke the hook out, and then I'll put him back in. Okay, so that's really the key, is ultimately you're tucked in there. You could barely feel that tip at that point, and you're good to go. Now, as far as rod goes, I throw my 7.2 medium heavy action rod. It's more of like a medium plus. That's what I like to throw. And this is the Paradigm SRI 3000. You guys know the line. But overall, like rod wise, I don't mind a medium, but I just don't like it to be like a medium with like a super fast tip. So anyway, that's sort of what I like. I like that more parabolic bend, and that's what works for me. So shaky head, old school, new school. That's my number 3 pick-ish. Okay, next on the list, this dude right here is a jig, but he's a swim jig. And a swim jig is a great bait to throw in the pre-spawn, and it's great in the summertime. It's great really a lot of different times of the year. This one's, again, more of that bluegill killer. If you're up north especially, and you're talking about lily pads, you're talking about like grass areas, this is really, really a great bait to cover a lot of water. Whether you're out there in the grass beds, like milfoil beds or coontail out offshore, that's when I'll throw like 14 pounds like fluorocarbon. Or if you're up there in like the thicker slop or thicker like matted vegetation, where I'm going to throw 30-pound braid, it's just a very versatile lure. Okay, and in the way I'm fishing this, you can catch them around boat docks. You know, you can catch them around wood on a swim jig, and even I feel like sometimes they think it's a dang crawdad swimming away. So it's like I'll even just throw a straight green pumpkin, and I think they like if I get back to the half of a creek, or if I get to a headwater, that's a really good bait to throw as well. It just depends on really what they're keying in on. So I try to match that whether you're fishing, places that have shad where I'll throw like more of a natural white color or more of like a translucent color, or if I end up throwing like more of that bluegilly type color, seems like that's the best for me. And I just really try to like focus on that forage. That's really the key with that. As far as rod setup, 7.2 medium heavy, the key with this rod and any swim jig rod for that matter, talk to DC, talk to anybody, is a super fast tip, but then transitions to good backbone. That is super important because that allows you to impart action into the bait, and then boom, when you set the hook, you got the backbone to pull them out of the stuff or really drive that hook home. So that's what I recommend. There's a lot of different swim jigs out there in the market, but I would say like as far as size wise, 3/8 is pretty standard, like a good one to probably go with. You can go like quarter if you're getting a little shallower, or a 1/2 ounce if you're wanting to get out offshore a little bit more, but 3/8, you're gonna be pretty solid. Okay, so we got a pretty good rundown of quite a few different baits, and if you guys you've made it this long in the video, you guys, hopefully you're learning something. If you're not already a subscriber of the channel, make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button. We really, truly appreciate it. We try to give you guys some good information, so if you did learn something from that and you don't already subscribe, hit that subscribe button. And I saved the best for last. The best for last, one that I don't think I've featured this one. I don't think I've featured this one on top baits of the month video. I don't think I have. But this is a very unique rig that catches a lot of fish, and something that I've gotten to a point where I think that it's really, I don't like to, everything that I have up here is stuff that I throw on a regular. Okay, I literally, this is the stuff that I have rigged in my boat. I'm just showing you guys and being straight up with you guys, because that's what I love to do, is I want you all to catch bass. So if this helps you catch one more bass throughout your season, then I did my job. That's really what it comes down to. We're all just trying to have fun. And the last one is something that I was a little bit apprehensive about, maybe. I didn't know if it was the deal necessarily at first, and then I realized how versatile it was and how the action was a little bit different. So anyway, without further ado, what do I got? Dun, 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 dun. The Tokyo rig. Okay, now I have more of a brush hog style bait on here. But the Tokyo rig, this is a VMC Tokyo rig. This is actually the flipping hook, the 4/0 heavy duty flipping hook. And this little dude right here, I've become a big fan of. I just think it's super versatile. The thing about it is it gets in and out of areas very well where you're flipping wood. And it separates, there's something about the action of separating the weight that's not in front of your line. I think there's something to that. It's pulling it a little bit different angle, and it imparts a different action into your baits. I think that a Texas rig is obviously standard. A lot of people throw a Texas rig. I continue to throw a Texas rig. But I feel like it just gives the fish something a little bit different to look at. And you can just change up your weight size according to what ultimately you're fishing around, Right here is sort of like a standard one that I like to throw. I put two 3/16 ounce VMC weights together. And if I want to make it silent, I'll just put like, a 3/8 or something on there, a 5/16. But I can really just throw whatever I want. And you put that up there on that wire, and then you just basically bend that over right there. So you bend it over and it's locked in there. Now I can just, obviously change any little plastic that I want on there, but all I have to do is now just tie them up, good to go. Now the reason I picked more of the brush hog, game hog style plastic was because for me, this time of year specifically, I want that more streamlined. I talked about it last time with a worm in July. I really like that streamline profile for this time of year. When you're talking about hot days, this is as close to like a streamlined worm profile lure as you're gonna get in a creature bait. So I like it for the summertime. I've caught a lot of bass on this kind of style lure this time of year, and even in September as well. So you might see this, I don't know. Now the advantage I've talked about some of the advantages of the Tokyo rig. The disadvantage of the Tokyo rig is you cannot skip him. So if you're not a good skipper, or you are a good skipper, just to be sorry, at least I can't. Maybe you guys can. Maybe you guys can skip him, but I can't skip him because what happens is you go to skip him and that weight hits the water first and it just, so. I mean, maybe somebody's figured a way to do that, but there is also the other reason why I like this rig the best is because it's like a mini drop shot. So I keep my bait up off the bottom. So if you're talking about silted areas, I talk about backs of creeks, if they're not biting that crankbait on that wood, this is a really good bait to throw or technique to throw because, okay, what happens in the backs of the creeks, a lot of these parts of the country, they're silted in. There's like this much muck. And when your bait, what happens is your bait goes down, it hits that muck and it just sinks into the mud. Well, with this dude, it just it basically hits that mud and then sinks in the mud a little bit, but that bait's still up out of the mud and that fish goes down there and bites it. So just something that I really like. Now, I also have this set up on a little bit different setup. I'm throwing 40 pounds. This is actually performance braid, Subject performance braid yellow with a 20 pound Subject advanced fluorocarbon leader, 7.3 heavy action rod, 8:3 gear ratio is what I'm setting it up with. So I go back and forth, but the braid to fluorocarbon deal, I'm throwing that's just an FG knot. I'm not like, I do have to revamp my FG knot because I'm tying it a little bit different now. So the one that I'm tying on the channel, there is a couple things that I'm just doing a little bit differently. So I will do that. I'll take that one maybe down and then I'll add a new one here soon. But that's it. That's my picks for the month of August. I just, hey, I'm pretty straightforward. I'm pretty simple, but these are very good picks. It's all about where you're throwing them. No matter where you're at in the country, fish are biting right now. This is a good time. This is really, I'm going to say, for the south part of the country, southern part of the country, middle, Midwest. This is really like one of the best, like really still good fishing months you have. And then September hits and it's like, ooh, things are getting tough. Ooh, tough fishing. And it's already starting, but there's definitely some places that you can sort of get in and out and fish around and catch some fish this time of year. So don't get discouraged. If you go out there, you get skunked, that's part of it. This is the time of year that's going to get a little bit tough, more difficult than the springtime. They're not up there spawning. Their bite windows are a little bit smaller. So don't get discouraged. Just stay at it. And thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate you all following the channel, and we will see you on the next one.